You're watching the free version of Mocha Essentials. Follow along with projects and footage with a premium download available at borisfx.com. In part 4 of exercise 10, the basics of roto continued, we are going to be moving away from the body now and moving on to a different challenge, which is going to be the head, and specifically starting with the sunglasses. Why are we going to start with the sunglasses? Well, the sunglasses themselves are going to help to drive a lot of the rest of the tracking that we're going to be doing later. And the reason we're going to use that to help drive some of this tracking is because these are the sort of big signifiers of this sort of motion of the head that we have. You know, they're quite big. They're mainly in view most of the time. And of course, they're not bending around or doing, you know, anything strange. They are normal sunglasses. So they are nice and flat. Now, that's not to say they're not without problems, as we will definitely see in the in this exercise. We have a few things to watch out for, and some things that we're going to be able to deal with easily, and some things that are going to be a bit more tricky. Like the thing that is going to be a bit more tricky, yet relatively easy to deal with, are the reflections in the sunglasses. As we've seen in previous exercises, if you cast your mind all the way back, reflections are not great for giving coplanar data. You know, they don't move in the same way as our, as the main screen or the main glass that they are reflecting or being reflected in. So how are you meant to get coplanar data from, the left and right eye there? That is definitely not sharing coplanar data. The other thing we have to be careful of is, of course, objects going over the top of the sunglasses. But again, this is a known issue. This is a known problem we have fixed and dealt with in previous exercises when we were talking about using track mats. So we're going to revisit those. And the final thing that we have to worry about or to think about is going to be not just reflections inside the glasses, but the way that the light reflects off of the glasses as well. With that in mind, we know what the known challenges are going to be. Let's see if it throws up some different challenges for us as well. Because this is going to be a brand new track, we're going to go back and we're going to use that main idea for when we're looking at what to track and how to track. We find a frame that is in focus. And we're pretty much here. We don't have a huge amount of motion blur in this one. We also have the object where it's facing the camera as much as possible, so we get the most information here. Best to start on this frame, which is frame 101, 1 second, 1 frame, than it is to start over here, where we're already dealing with things in perspective, or even at the start, where again things are in perspective. So let's take a look, shall we? Let's see what we can do. Now I'm going to use the area brush to help out with this one. This is another Mocha Pro feature. If you're not using Mocha Pro, you can just use the regular X-Spline. But the area brush is just a very nice, quick way of painting in a shape here. So rough shapes for tracking is the perfect use of the area brush. And I can hold down the Control or Command key. I can just move my mouse up and down, left or right, and that will change the size of the area brush. And when I've done that, I can just paint it. So I'm going to paint the full thing here, the full sunglasses. Let's see what we get with this. Looking good. And when I am done with this, I can turn Quick Mask off, and that will give me a shape. If we want to add to the shape or remove stuff from the shape, we can come in to our area brush with a little plus sign and zoom in. If I want to remove stuff, so like I've got too much of the reflection here, I can just hold down the Alt key and look what happens to my circle. The circle gets a little minus in it. Alt key not held down. Alt key held down. Then I can just come in, I can paint this stuff out. There we go. And I'll do this on the other side as well. And that will remove that area from my shape. Lovely bubbly. It's the same over here. Probably I'll take out a little bit of the skin. I'm fine with leaving, a bit more space around than I actually need, but we probably, want to be a bit more careful about this. Take a look at the selected matte, and we have our sunglasses. Very nice. Okay, let's call this one Sunglasses 1. Is this a bit of foreshadowing? Maybe. Okay, and we're going to track this through. But we're going to track this through with the idea that at some point, we're not going to be able to see some of the sunglasses. So what do we do here? Well, we have to make track mats. Now, I've already got a track mat for the hand. It's called my hand mask, which I've got here. And let's remember something about the track mats. And let's just zoom out a little bit so we can see the hand. Yeah, we use track mats to stop Mocha from looking at particular areas when it's calculating the tracking. So this is a perfect use for track mats. So I'm going to take my hand mask out. I need to bring it up over the top of my sunglasses. So let's come over to the sunglasses frame here. And we have a hand mask over the top in the layer order. And let's see what happens when we start to track this backwards. I'm going to track this backwards with perspective. Because of why? Well, you fill in this blank. I think we've gone through enough now to know why we're tracking in perspective. But just to be sure, it's because this is flat, it is rigid, and that perspective is going to give us the best tracking data for this particular type of movement. I'm going to come back in. I'm just going to turn on selected track mats on the drop down of the color overlays, so we can see what's going to happen as we track this backwards. Okay, let's go track backwards and let's see what happens. As the hand goes over, it's going to cut out that shape. Nice. Now we also have this other hand over here. Now this other hand at the back, let's turn the overlays off for a second. This other hand at the back is going behind the glasses, so shouldn't really be affecting what's going on, except for one thing. And that one thing is we've given it quite a lot of space around this edge. So look what happens when our hand comes in. Now Mocha's very clever, but it doesn't know that this is a hand yet. What it's looking at is the texture within the shape that we've defined. Is this an extraneous object, or is this just part of how the shape is now moving? It's not a big pop that we get as it goes in. It actually looks pretty good, but it might be enough to sort of throw it off enough that we have to make corrections for it. So instead of doing the second guess about that, we can use multiple track mats on a single object, or we can have multiple track mats for a single object that we're tracking. So I'm going to take my hand right mask up and bring this in over the top of my sunglasses as well. And let's just track that backwards one more time. I'll turn my color overlays on again so we can see what's going to happen here. Now it's going to exclude that from the area. Okay, so we've tracked it backwards. Let's see what happens when we track it forwards now. And this is where the nose is really going to, yeah, there we go. So the nose really has sent it off at this particular stage. So that's not particularly great. So what can we do with this? Well, yeah, let's create a mask, another mask for the nose. So I'm going to turn off the overlays here so we don't get confused about what we're seeing. I'm going to actually turn off everything apart from my sunglasses. I say turn off everything and just turn off visibility on everything. And let's create a new X-spline layer and come in and we'll just do the nose here. Boom, boom, boom. Make it nice and pretty. I'm not going to worry too much because this is going to just be a very rough nose track mat. When we're dealing with track mats, we don't have to be particularly 100% accurate because we're just using them to cut out stuff. So here, I'm doing quick animation on it. Is this how the nose actually moves? Nope. But is it going to be good enough for what we're trying to do? Well, hopefully. Yeah. There we go. And let's just bring that there. Let's come to our layer properties and we'll start our nose track matte at 1 second and 2 frames. Let's just check to make sure that it covers all the area we want it to. It doesn't quite. So let's just bring this in here. Because the worst thing is if we just have like the track matte sort of coming in and out all the time, that could actually do more damage to the track than not having it in there at all. At least if it's not in there at all, we can sort of judge what's going to happen to it. But let's keep that in. Let's bring in our sunglasses there. Okay, and let's now come back to our start frame. Turn on my processing cog back on the sunglasses so we can track this forwards. And that looks like it's done an even worse job. Okay, so let's see if we can break down why that is. The first thing I'm going to do is delete the frames that we've already tracked in. Now, this is something we haven't seen before. This is a new window for us to look at. We're going to come into the parameters and I'm going to come into the dope sheet. Now, the dope sheet is an overview of all of the things that we've done, all of the keyframes we've got on our layers. So we can see the layers on the left-hand side. Here's our sunglasses. And we can open up these and see lots of different information about the keyframes that we've added. I don't really want to worry too much about that, because what we've got at the top of the dope sheet are just all of the keyframes here. So if I select all of these and just go delete, make sure I'm on the sunglasses layer, that's going to get rid of all of the keyframes that we've added for all of the parameters along the sunglasses at the bottom there. Now, because we haven't added anything else other than the tracking data, this is fine and this works out perfectly. Just know that if we had shape data added in here, just like if we open up my nose track matte, we can come down and we can see the spline control points that we've seen down here. But I like to keep this as simple as possible. The dope sheet is where I'll get rid of bad tracking information. Let's go into the parameters another little time here. And I just want to change up maybe some of the search area, maybe the angle a little bit to see if that's going to help us to bring in a little bit better tracking here. And I can turn up my minimum percentage of pixels used. So this is how many pixels that Mocha is looking for between the frames. And let's see if this one helps. Let's come in and we'll just track this forwards again. It's helped a little bit, but it's still not perfect. So I'm just going to undo a few times just to get us back to frame 101. And let's see what happens if I bring my minimum percentage of pixels used all the way up. I won't take it to 100. I'll take it to 95 or something like that. And let's track that forwards. You can see if you get too high on that minimum percentage of pixels used, it really will just fall apart. Let's undo that again. And let's see what happens when I take that down even lower. So it started off with this shape. It started off with a automatic one of 50. Let's see what happens if we take that down to 25. And it's almost there, but it's not quite there. It's a little bit better. It starts to go off really because we've got all of these reflections. So it very much is the reflections that are causing us trouble here. So what can we do about that? Well, let's undo. And I'll put this back up again. I'll put this probably back up to 75-ish. There we go. So we just brought it up a little bit. So there's a couple of things we can do here to help Mocha over this hump. So we can get rid of the areas where it's getting the bad tracking data. That's one of the things we can do. Let's turn off the color overlays. And that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I can, either, drag these out a little bit so that these are much more in keeping with the actual things, the actual borders of the sunglasses. And because I'm on my start frame, anything I do here is going to be absolutely fine. It's not going to change any of the tracking data, remember, because of that separation between the tracking data and the shape data. So we're just limiting that area there. I'll take some of these points are out. Now I have to manually move them. All of a sudden I'm a little bit more kind of conscious of what these are doing. So we get rid of these. So yeah, so one way is to limit the bad data that we're giving Mocha. So we completely take the reflections out of the equation, or I say completely, as completely as we possibly can, I think here. There we go. The other thing that we can do is try to give it more good data as well. And we've seen this in earlier exercises where we've added shapes in, coplanar shapes, to try to, coax the tracker into the right position. And I'm actually going to experiment with that here as well. So I'm going to come into my ellipse tool and I'm going to go ellipse X-spline plus. So this is going to add a shape to my sunglasses layer. I don't want to create a new layer. I just want to add to this one. And I'm going to go around the mouth. Now, is the mouth 100% coplanar with the sunglasses? Not 100%, but it's going to be pretty good. And it might be just enough to give us that extra tracking information that we need. And let's track that forwards now. And we can see now, as it moves along, it's wrong. So it's not lining up perfectly. But let's turn on the surface. We haven't seen this surface for a little bit. And we'll turn on the grid here. I'm just going to play this back. So look at the front here. Oh, sorry, look at the back. It's wrong, but it's consistently wrong. It moves in a nice, consistent way. There's no one frame where it just hops and is wrong. Let's move to the other side. Let's move to the front here. And it looks like there's something here where you can see that pop. Look what happens here. It pops out a little bit. And that's inconsistently wrong data. And that inconsistently wrong data, the one that sort of pops and fizzes a little bit, is much more difficult for us to use than data that goes wrong but is consistent at the very least. So let's do one last thing to this. I'm going to add a keyframe on the mouth, and I'm going to move this shape up somewhere else that's kind of coplanar. If I right click on one of the points in that mouth, I can go select all in spline, and that will just select that spline for me. I'm going to make this smaller, and I'm going to make it around the nostril. Is it 100% coplanar? No. Is it good enough? Well, let's see. Let's track this backwards. Look at that. It's wrong, but it's consistently wrong. It's wrong in a nice, smooth way. And that is the type of wrong that we can use. So this actually is a very important lesson. This is something it's very different than what we've been doing previously, because this isn't about taking a less than good piece of tracking data and then, fixing it afterwards by adding tons and tons of keyframes. Because we're going to be using this track so many times, we want to make sure that this data is as smooth as possible. And if we can't get this track 100% accurate, at least we want it inaccurate in a way that is consistent with the movement. Anything that sort of bubbles and pops, we can't use. We're going to spend more time fighting that bad tracking data than we're going to gain from actually going in and not using any tracking, for example. Because at the end of it, if we're fighting bad tracking data, we're going to have to end up, adding keyframes on every single frame anyway. And it's just going to be horrible. At least when we did the manual animation in the previous part for doing the arm, even if we had to add in lots of manual keyframes, at least those were going to be consistent. And that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for consistency. I think this is going to be good enough when we come to use it and attach it to different roto splines that we're not going to have to fight the tracker. And that's the overall lesson for this exercise. In the next part of exercise 10, we're actually going to be using this tracking data to drive the missing parts that we have in our shape. So we're going to be doing this for the head, the sunglasses, of course, and possibly even helping us with the hair. Go grab yourself a nice drink of something, and I will see you back coffee cup in hand. See you in part 5 of exercise 10, the basics of roto, continued. You've been watching the free version of Mocha Essentials. To download all videos, projects and footage, purchase the premium version available at borisfx.com.